you have to understand why I'm emphasizing these kinds of processes. We heard Neil talk about how, kind of BPM's kind of this old thing. It's not dead yet, but it seems to be writhing around on the ground. And so BPM is not really that sexy of a term. So we're going to have to hitch our wagon to something else. And I think IBM, I hate to give IBM credit for something, but they really did come up with a good one this time. They came up with the notion of what is known as a hybrid process. And I believe that we could change the name of BPM and call it hybrid processes, put our muscle behind that, and move forward. But I think we would change the dial a little bit. I know Neil said it's a 3% growth. At Gartner, we were saying was like 10% growth of the software. But still, even if you changed it to 12% growth, is that something that we want? Or do we want this genie in the bottle that we have to get to everybody? And I think we do. So I'm going to hitch my wagon going forward, not to the term BPM, but to the idea of transforming to the digital organization. And we have to find ways of showing the organization how BPM, or more interestingly, processes help organizations become a better digital organization. We saw a couple of really nice examples of that from SAP and W4. And those were more Internet of Things. I'm going to give you some more examples from the real world that will show you, that are in production today, that will show you how we're going to make that move. So if you want to contact me to talk, or you want to read my blog, or you want to discuss some things, because it's always fun being in this kind of crew with a bunch of really smart people. We like to argue with each other, right? We like to debate. We like to do all those wonderful things. And by the way, this was inspired from a presentation that I saw Keith give last year, where he showed a bunch of birds, I think they were starlings, that would swarm to meet certain conditions. Something would get in their way, or the flock decided to go a certain way, and he showed a beautiful video of it. And it showed that these birds with constraints and rules and goals could keep from hitting each other and could, basically survive rolling forward. And that's what we're going to have to do with our processes. The only thing is, with BPM, we're going to have geese, ducks, ostriches, pigeons, sparrows, and starlings all flocking together. And we heard a little bit about robotics. That's one kind of bird. We heard about the Internet of Things. That's another kind of bird. So today, we have many kinds of process styles available. We like to argue amongst ourselves which one's better. Is it case? Is it customer journey mapping? Is it mapping? Is it machine intense? We have all of these kinds of styles. And by the way, they're all in production. They're all working. They're all giving great ROIs. The nice thing about BPM is there aren't a lot of sad stories. I've been in IT for a long time, 50 plus years. And there were sad stories around everything, but there aren't around BPM. The only problem is we don't have a shiny new name. So we have to find ways of linking these things together in hybrid systems. So I've put in green what is really working well. I put in yellow things that are still working and evolving. And I put in red those things that are kind of new and a little bit risky. And so when we build these hybrid swarming systems that have chickens and ostriches working together, that you know where your risk is. But we do have real world examples where these work together. Now what we have to convince management, and I don't know if you've ever been in a technical position having to talk to senior VPs and executives and trying to convince them that this is going to help them rather than you expressing a technology that you want to use on them, because that's the way they view it. You have to find some kind of visionary that wants to solve a business problem that's worthwhile. The nice thing is there are so many pressures today on executives, they're looking for answers. They're dying for answers. So we have to help them figure out ways to compete better. Now, processes deliver hybrid kinds of benefits, cost savings, revenue opportunities, time to market. We've seen the whole bevy today of what kinds of benefits and what kinds of things we can deliver. That's awesome. Here's some examples. Heathrow Airport, running surgery centers, managing health, managing retail. But the nice thing is we have the ability to help organizations deal with these big changes. They have big change facing them right in the face. And they have employees that do not want to change. They have stockholders breathing down their neck most of the time. So we have the ability to help them do that. So process can help organizations cope with big change, doing it potentially incrementally, and that's the way I believe. Earlier, it was mentioned that in the BPMS, simulation was listed as a requirement. Simulation means testing, prototyping, and simulation execution, so it's not just one of those. So by prototyping and doing incremental hot changes, we can build to things. We saw some examples of prototypes today. Here's what they're fighting for: customer loyalty. Customers are hard to please, especially if you have antiquated systems that force the customers to select their own service. Did you ever try to call and get into a company? Select 1 if you want to talk to a turkey accountant about your bill. Select 2 if you want to talk to somebody about maintenance issues. Select 3 if you want to talk to a customer. What have we done to our customers? We force them to traverse our organization. We force them to deal with our corporate specialties. Why do we have corporate specialties? The Industrial Revolution forced us into specialties. Don't get me wrong, I don't want my liver doctor working on my heart. But there's no reason that a general customer service rep with some knowledge can't help a customer and they only have to talk to one person. Have you ever been on the line and you realize that you pressed the wrong button and they're going to transfer you to somebody else who can really help you? Then you have to re-enter your customer information all over again. They ask you the security questions all over again, and you're treated like what? You feel special as a customer? Not really, right? So fighting for new pocketbooks, and that's why we see a lot of BPM being used for opening new accounts. Loyalty, the speed of reaction. We're not going to do speed of reaction in seconds. It's going to be nanoseconds. We're going to combine white collar with the Internet of Things. We saw an example of when somebody falls down, how do you know whether they got back up again? What I really wanted to know is, could the person that fell down be sleeping with the lady next door that was supposed to watch for him? But I shouldn't think that way. So the notion of being able to do things faster, fighting upstarts. Is there Uber in everybody's industry? Not today, but there will be tomorrow. Can you imagine if you get to start off with a clean slate and strong tools, strong digital capabilities, what you can do? Fighting for differentiation in commodity industries and to show your significance. Here's an example. This particular company tried to break specialties. They set up a customer service rep, a general rep. They tried to use artificial intelligence so that the general rep could ask questions. And they started off with the most difficult problem. This was an insurance company, and they sold multiple products. So the problem they started out with is, if a customer says, and they're a really good customer, by the way, this particular company had lots of very, very rich people with deep pockets, and they didn't want to lose them. So if they wanted to change from an insurance policy to an annuity or to a lifetime care policy, they would do it for them. It took lots of people. So they said, that's our worst problem. We're going to let artificial intelligence and expert systems help us. This is back in the 80s when this stuff first came out. And they believed in the idea of let's get rid of specialization. They failed miserably because they couldn't get the rules in because the technology was too hard to use. Today, it's easy to use. So we can do those things. So what they did is they isolated it to underwriting. They said, well, we maybe not be able to help service our existing customers, but we could bring new customers on board faster, and we could keep our risk down. So what they did is they came up with a workbench for underwriters that would represent what the doctor knew, what an advanced nurse knew, what a senior underwriter knew, and they could make that knowledge available. They tried to create a doc in a box, but that was too difficult. So they took specialized tests like blood chems, urine analysis, and they could enable these specialists of any kind to handle these underwriting kinds of applications. And so they added some intelligence, and they were able to, if it wasn't jet underwritten, which most insurance policies are, except when you have very high policies that are over 10 million, which this company had, then it required humans. And so they were able to change their response rate from months to days. So this breaking the specialty mindset is a key theme. You don't hear people talking about better customer service because of the way we artificially created stovepipes in our companies, and Process can solve that. People talk about, well, you need more CRM data. You need history. Yes, you do, but that's not the real problem. Breaking the speed barrier. Imagine if you, and by the way, this is in production in Norway, that you have a dementia patient. And have you ever been related to a dementia patient or watched them? What do they try to do? They try to bolt, right? Run. I will probably be one of those. Run, get out of here. So what they did in Norway is a number of organizations that were doing life care put GPS tracking mechanisms on their wrists. And the minute they approached a boundary, they would be watching them. They would get alerted. And if they crossed that boundary, they knew that they crossed the boundary, and they would send somebody out after them. So that's how it first started. It saved lives. My father-in-law, they found in the gutter in one of the streets, he bolted from his particular life support organization because he wanted to get a new bulb for his lamp, and it burnt out at 3 in the morning, and he was mad, like all dementia patients are, and wanted to get one. So they found him, the police found him in the curb. He could have been killed. This will help people do that. Now, they've added predictive analytics. There are certain people that are bolters, as I call them. They want to run. So they can watch to see how many times somebody approaches a barrier, and they can find out which parts of the barriers are approached first. So here's an example of speed. Here we have BPM, process management, with the Internet of Things working together. Imagine coming up with new innovation. This is one where, and I can't say that this is the US government where because they'd come and kill me, but they run a fleet of electric vehicles in California that are small, lightweight vehicles. And they're all electric, and they charge up usually at night. They charge up at night because electricity is cheaper at night, right? Everybody's got, time of day metering these days. You know that electricity's cheaper at night. So what they did is they used predictive analytics and route management to figure out how they could use the vehicles, solve the things that needed to be delivered, did all the routing, and they tried to bring the vehicles in early so they could plug the vehicles back into the system where they could start contributing back to the electrical grid when the demand was high. Well, the government had a problem with this because they were making money. You know what happens when the government makes money? It doesn't know what to do, right? So they had to tone it down a bit and change the rules so that they at least break even. So isn't that nice? Your government at work here in the United States. But here's an innovative. Can you imagine the government being innovative? That's hard for me to imagine. But who used COBOL first? Who used computers first? So providing innovation. What about the idea of doing incremental change? There are a number of farms that have these things called little pills. They throw them out in the field. These fields can measure water. They can measure how much fertilizer is there. They're dialed in for the kind of crop that they are. So if you throw these pills out there, the farmers know when to water. So they can turn on the watering machines and the fertilizing machines, or even do it manually. So that's how it started. Then these pills were linked to bots, and the bots would come out and automatically water and would automatically fertilize based on the pills communicating to them. Then they started linking it to water models. They had local runoff models, they had national weather models, and predictors for moisture. So here's an example of doing incremental big change. This is a big change in farming. And you can see the results are 40% increase in yield. So I think going digital is what you want to have as your lead. And executives are struggling with how do you go digital? How do you incrementally change? How do I get there? What's my plan? Now, there's a couple of ways you can go. You can do it, try it, fix it. And that's cool. But if you don't have a target, you can do it, try it, fix it in circles, can't you? And BPM allows you to do that without some kind of model. So here's an example of a stock trader workbench. And that particular workbench is, around a particular trader, which today is a human, could be a bot in the future. They have a portfolio manager that's a process. It's a process snippet. They have a yield projection process, which is a batch program. They have forecasting agents. They have data mining agents. They have mathematical agents. They have risk assessment agents. Now we're getting into ostriches and turkeys and swallows, all being swarmed together to support a trader. So these are very goal-directed. They're goal-directed by the yield and by the portfolio management with the portfolio goals. And they have agents that are coming to assist them while they're doing the trade. So processes, today we view them as central and controlling when they want intelligence. They may listen for signals in parallel. But we're going to move to a world when these robots, these Internet of Things, these controllers will actually have the intelligence and bring the processes together. So I've given you some examples that are in production today. We see that process is in the middle of this. Today, the way process works is the process is generally in control. We're saying that the goals are going to be in control. The contexts are going to be in control. The patterns are going to be in control. And we're going to have to learn how to live with that. So we're used to thinking, I have my business model running everything. It manages all the resources. And there's going to be cases where it is. But imagine a world where the intelligence and analytics is distributed so that agents are negotiating to service you. There's examples in the car manufacturing where the cars are driven around the assembly plant with goals. They know the car knows what color it's going to be. It knows what kind of quality it has to have. It knows the stations it has to touch. And if something happens in the middle of that manufacturing process, it can shift. So we fight a lot about what kind of processes are we going to have. If we want complex business differentiation, we are going to have all of the kinds of processes, whether it's structured, case collaboration, or the Internet of Things. Also, the process may be in control for part of it, or other capabilities will be in control. Can you imagine a bunch of swarming agents deciding what to do next? Well, these things better be pretty smart, right? They better be able to work together. So it doesn't make any difference whether you're talking about an API, a service, a process snippet, a robot, a cog, a machine API, a controller, a thing, or a person. When the process has some interaction with it, it has to know the level of intelligence, the level of humanity, the level of goal-driven, and the level of collaboration. So if you can measure all of the resources that are contributing, that are swarming, you'll be able to do a better job. This is where we're headed. This is where we're going to be able to help companies become digital. We've seen examples of where the process has been in control and knows these things, and there's some really good benefits. And I'm going to run through some of those examples. So what's going to swarm? What are my chickens? What are my ducks? What are my swallows? We're going to have knowledge workers, managers, and real workers that are on the line. We're going to have cognition and analysis, lots of big data, in memory hopefully, APIs to manage, and process components. Might be a step, might be a case, might be a snippet, and you're going to have sensors, controllers, robots, and drones. All of these are going to be able to swarm and support a new innovative business. Now, if you're working for some stodgy old insurance company, this is going to be a bit of a shock to your system. But this is where the world is going to head. So we're going to have dynamic hybrid collaboration that's going to abound. We're going to have hybrid resources that work together. We're going to have hybrid process styles that work together. We're going to have hybrid speeds, because the Internet of Things is working at nanoseconds. People, not necessarily so, particularly if they're knowledge workers, right? And they're going to be intermixing. You're going to have customized, dynamic, machine learnable goals. You're going to have hybrid digital technology. So if you're going to attach your wagon to anything in process, attach it to the digital movement. It's hot. Now, I'm not saying that Gartner is God, but they're having a huge influence on going digital, right? Isn't that their whole theme? They're basing their whole company's future on going digital. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of brain power. I think they've got a good direction. And I wasn't really involved with setting that theme when I was there, but I think it's good. Now, you as vendors, what do? What do you have to do to deal with this? You have to find ways to represent different things that you haven't done before. And whether it's a model ahead of time, I don't care, or if it's a measurement afterwards to show the relations, you have to find a way of representing collaborations. You have to find a way of setting goals. Good for living systems. They have, and they're leveraging them. If you don't have them, you better get them. And we talked about rules being important. I would say more specifically, if you have free-ranging flocks of things moving, you better have constraints. So in other words, you can do anything, but you can't do this. Otherwise, you've got governance issues. Did you ever have a teenage child go out on their first date? Did you repeat everything that you taught them? No. You give them constraints. You can do anything you want, but don't do these two things. Of course, what do? Those two things. But you have to find a way of building constraint models. Mathematical models, hybrid polyanalytic models. Find ways of delivering context. Certain kinds of swarming patterns don't work in certain contexts. If you have a certain kind of client base, and also representing patterns. Is this in fact the next kind of database, which is ontological relationships? Is that how we represent patterns? Or do we hold them inside of our process and know that one thing is triggered, you're not going to go on to the next step? I mean, that's rather limiting. We have to find ways to represent these things. And if you are vendors and you have ways of representing these, I'd love to hear about it. And particularly if you have them in production, so I can write them up as a case study. So here's one that I heard at IBM's Interconnect. This is an awesome one. And this uses Cogs. And it uses these intelligent notions. And this is somebody wants to buy a bike. So she comes into the store, and it turns out that there's a video monitor or kiosk she walks up to, and this kiosk has a cog that can determine what kind of mood she's in. Okay? We know she's happy, she's sad, she's excited, whatever. It also figured out her body type when she walked towards it. So it knows approximately how much she weighs, and women aren't going to like that, but how much she weighs and what kind of bike would be right. She walks up to the monitor she wants to select. So these two cogs have determined what kind of personality, what kind of mood, and she keys in some information about what kind of biking she wants to do, and it automatically pulls up a video of that bike with a female rider doing the kinds of things she wants to do. Hopefully she's in a good mood so we can sell her a bike. So this determines mood, and it determines personality type. If we happened to deal with her in the past, or on the cloud, there's a personality profile that's out there that was produced by another cog, we can tell what her personality is. This is an excellent example, and this is courtesy of IBM. Imagine agents swarming to service a general servicing person who is automatically given the right information about this customer. Information, mood. Let's say there's a voice cog that can tell what kind of mood this person is when they're calling in, or what kind of mood this guy is when he's trying to self-service. There might be account wisdom, product wisdom, billing wisdom, technical wisdom, and government wisdom, all swarming to help you as a general service rep to solve this customer's problem. This is a world that we're headed towards, where the intelligence helps. May even be robots. Imagine swarming to find a suitable house. Today, what kinds of things happen through process? Mortgage applications, right? Post-settlement, capture for account opening, 6, 7, and 8. Well, when you look for a house as a customer, what happened? They skipped a lot of key steps, didn't they? Imagine if you sent a photograph of the kind of house you liked in the kind of hood you want to live in, right? This picture in this zip code appeals to me. What if you were able to put that out to bid, or your bank, you had a good relationship with your bank, or there was something in the cloud where you could create a profile. And by the way, this is courtesy of Gartner, one of their banking analysts, dreamt this new business model up. Imagine you were able to aggregate financial information. Well, on the way home, it could be figuring out what the customer's budget is if it was connected to everything. And it could search for similar homes and present them to you and say, oh, by the way, we'll give you a loan because we know all about you, we like you, we think you should buy the house and run your mortgage through us. So what we're seeing is different kinds of things swarming in the background to service people better. It's not just the UI. It's not just mobile. Those things are great. I love them. They're fantastic. But how you treat customers, how you anticipate their needs, is how we need to deal with process. The other thing that needs to happen, and this is why I asked the robotic guy if there's anybody out there that can look at how the robots are collaborating with each other and whether there are better practice patterns. This kind of a process you have to dig a bunch of data. And you have to say, I want to take this big data from process mining, and I want to sort it, select it, wash it, and I want to pull out the key nuggets. I want to pull out not just optimization ideas, which are great. Optimization for cost and time, those are all cool. But I also wanted to pull out alternative better practices. So what swarming worked? What constraints were hit? What did people think that were being serviced or helped? You combine all those things together along with process mining, and now we've got something that's really powerful. So I don't care whether you model in front and measure in the back or both. I come from a planning culture. I like to model first because now I can collaborate with everybody throughout the world and we can say what we think the process is. Then we can run it for a while, do it, try it, fix it, swarm it, and then learn about the patterns that are going to be productive. This is the kind of processes you're going to start to see emerge. This is the kind of stuff I think we should hitch our process wagons to. This is where I think we're going. Now, there's a lot of ethics issues, aren't there, right? Automation has some big issues. I presented this slide last year, but what do you do when you have a little robot inspecting the pipelines, and they look at all of the welds as they go through a pipe? And what if one of those pipes explodes? Who are you going to blame? The guy that manufactured the robot? So we're going to have a lot of different issues that we're going to have to deal with and control issues. How many want their autonomous car that'll take them anywhere they want? In this room, I expected about half. We got about 40%. Me, I'm not ready. I'm a gearhead. I like to control my own destiny. So here's the things that you can do. This is a typical kinds of recommendations, what you should be doing. This is more for end customers. This is what we're showing your end customers. If you're a vendor, my advice to you is to add those models that I had up on that one slide. And if you have any questions, I have several minutes for questions since the speaker before me finished early. I love you. And they're going to love us both because they get to go to drinks on time.